I knew my family didn't truly notice me, but nothing prepared me for what my mother said that evening. She leaned back in her chair, eyes frosted, and told me, "Don't expect anything from us." My older brother actually grinned like he'd been waiting to see me collapse. I didn't. I remained perfectly still, even as the air around me seemed to shrink. Something in the silence felt unfamiliar, like someone else had finally heard enough. And just when Mom believed she'd won, a chair scraped behind her slow, deliberate, and that was the instant everything shifted, though none of them realized it yet. My name is Elena, and for most of my life, I believed staying silent was the safest way to survive my own family. I grew up in a small home in Portland, where the walls felt thin, the expectations heavy, and affection seemed carefully measured. Mom always claimed she treated us fairly, but even as a child, I could see the imbalance. My brother Aaron got the bigger dessert slices, the latest clothes, the louder praise. I received whatever remained when everything else settled. I learned young not to request much. When Aaron wanted something, a school trip or a new jacket, Mom made it happen no matter the cost. When I needed help with college forms or a ride to my part-time job, the response was usually, "You're old enough to figure it out." So I did. I worked long shifts, saved every cent, and convinced myself independence was a badge of dignity, not punishment. Grandfather James was the single exception. He was patient, steady, and never made me feel like caring about me required effort. His house always smelled like cedar and old journals, and every time I visited, he'd smile and say, "You look exhausted, sweetheart. Sit. Tell me everything." I didn't tell him everything, of course, but he listened to the pieces I felt brave enough to share. As I grew older, the favoritism didn't fade, it sharpened. Mom spoke about Aaron like he was the center of gravity. She covered his unpaid bills, co-signed his leases, and bailed him out of problems he caused. I kept my distance, working in office, administration downtown, staying quiet, living small, because I never wanted to need anything from them. But the unevenness became impossible to ignore. Little comments accumulated, jokes about how Aaron would carry the family name, hints that I should step aside when decisions were made. Even during holidays, I felt like furniture, present, useful, but ignored. Still, I kept showing up. That's what you do when you hope a family might one day choose you back. When Grandfather James invited everyone to a winter dinner at Mom's house, I assumed it was just another seasonal gathering. He'd been tired lately, moving slower, relying on me more during doctor visits and errands. I figured he just wanted all of us together to feel close again. But when I entered the dining room that evening, something in the air felt heavy, like everyone already knew a script I hadn't been given. I simply didn't realize the lines they were about to speak would change everything. By the time dinner began, the tension in the room felt thick enough to chew. Mom walked around the table with the confidence of someone who believed she already controlled the outcome of the night. Aaron leaned back in his chair, scrolling on his phone, barely acknowledging anyone. Grandfather James sat quietly at the head of the table, hands folded, eyes sharper than they seemed moments earlier. I sat near him, the only place that ever felt remotely safe. Small talk died quickly. Mom brought out the food, set the dishes down slightly to hard, then cleared her throat like she was preparing for a speech she'd rehearsed. I felt my stomach tighten. She had that expression, the one she wore before delivering a decision she expected everyone to accept without question. So she began, lifting her glass. "I think it's time we discuss the future of this family." Aaron sat up, suddenly attentive. Grandfather James didn't move. I remained quiet. Mom began a long explanation about responsibility and keeping things in order, words she liked using when she meant control. She talked about the house, the finances, and long-term decisions, while Aaron nodded like a politician pretending to understand legislation he hadn't read. Then she looked directly at me. "Elena," she said, sounding almost uninterested, "we've decided that your brother will handle everything moving forward." I blinked, everything inside me repeating, keeping my tone even. "He is?" She shrugged. "He's the more reliable one, more committed to the family. So yes." Aaron smirked, the corner of his mouth lifting like a child who'd been handed a gift belonging to someone else. I felt humiliation burn low in my chest, but my expression stayed calm. He liked when I reacted. Mom liked it even more. I folded my hands on the table. "And me?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Mom didn't hesitate. "Don't expect anything from us. just like that cold final, spoken with the same tone someone might use to say, "Pass the pepper." It wasn't a sentence that echoed, it stabbed. The room fell painfully silent. Erin leaned back, satisfied. Mom adjusted her napkin like she had just crossed off a task. And I sat there, feeling that familiar weight settle in my ribs. I'd heard thousands of subtle forms of that message throughout my life, but hearing it aloud, formally, publicly, felt like being erased in real time. I inhaled slowly. I remained calm. Calm in a way that no longer felt like defeat. Calm like clarity. Calm like something within me aligned. I glanced at Grandfather James, expecting sympathy. What I saw instead was something completely different: recognition, focus, and a quiet, simmering disappointment not aimed at me. He shifted in his chair just slightly, but enough for me to understand he wasn't going to let this go. And without knowing it, Mom had crossed the single line that would cost her everything. The rest of the dinner continued as if nothing had happened, at least for them. Mom kept talking about Erin's plans. Erin bragged about accomplishments he hadn't achieved, and I sat there letting their voices blur into meaningless noise. But underneath that stillness, something in me was changing, slow, steady, like the crack of distant ice. When I excused myself to help clear the table, Mom followed me into the kitchen. She didn't come to apologize. She came to reinforce her statement. "You're not upset, are you?" she asked, slicing through the question with fake concern. "I mean, you're independent. You always take care of yourself." There it was again, that twisted praise, meaning, "You don't matter as much." I dried my hands with a towel. "I heard what you said." She looked relieved, like I had accepted my placement. "Good. It's better for everyone this way." Everyone meaning her, meaning Erin, never me. Behind her, Erin leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching like a spectator at a show he believed already had its ending. "It's not personal, Elena," he said. "It's just obvious. You don't need anything." I met his eyes for the first time that night. "Maybe I don't," I replied softly. He frowned, confused by my lack of reaction. Mom waved her hand and walked back toward the dining room. "Let's have dessert," she said. "Grandfather James wants to talk before he leaves." Grandfather James, the only name in that house that didn't make my shoulders tense. I walked back into the room and found him sitting exactly where I left him. But now he watched me with an intensity that made my pulse stall. It wasn't pity. It wasn't shock. It was something quiet, deeper, a decision forming. He reached toward his pocket, then paused when Mom and Erin returned. His hand rested on the table instead, fingers tapping lightly, a habit he had when thinking through something serious. Mom sat beside him and patted his arm, using the sweet tone she reserved only when she wanted him to agree. "Dad, we were just discussing how Erin should take control of everything. It's time to make things official." Erin sat straighter, proud. Grandfather James's tapping stopped. He lifted his gaze toward Mom. "Is that so?" She didn't notice the shift in his tone. She continued smiling. "Yes, Elena understands. She knows she doesn't need anything from us." My breath hitched. The tapping stopped. Grandfather James took a slow breath, eyes darkening not with age, but with realization. I felt the atmosphere shift slightly. Something was coming, something Mom and Erin couldn't see yet. As the conversation continued, I saw Grandfather James's hand drift back toward his pocket, toward the envelope he almost removed earlier. His jaw tightened, shoulders straightened, and for the first time, Mom's confidence flickered like a candle hit by a draft. She didn't know it, but the foundation beneath her was already cracking, and all she had done was give him one final reason to act. Grandfather James didn't speak immediately. He just sat there, eyes locked on Mom in a way that made the room feel tighter. The tapping was gone, replaced by a stillness heavier than any raised voice. I recognized that stillness. It was the one he carried in hospital rooms when difficult news was about to be spoken. It meant he was finished listening. Mom didn't notice. She poured herself more tea, humming as if the night was unfolding exactly as planned. "Dad, we should finalize everything tonight," she said. "Erin and I have agreed. Everything will run smoother once the documents are updated. The home, the savings, the accounts, it's time Erin manages it." Erin puffed up. "I'll make sure everything's handled." Grandfather James's voice came low. "Handled?" Erin grinned. "Yeah." Grandfather James leaned back slightly, studying him. "And Elena?" he asked, voice deceptively casual. Mom sighed, annoyed. "Dad, we've discussed this already. Elena doesn't need anything from the family. She's always been independent. She knows that. She turned toward me, expecting agreement. Right? I didn't respond. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I feared any response could shatter the delicate tension. Something inside me warned that this moment wasn't about my words. It was about his. He placed both hands on the table and cleared his throat. The scrape of his chair made Aaron pause mid-smirk. I think, Grandfather James began slowly. It's time I speak. Mom forced a smile. Of course, Dad. We know this is emotional for you. His jaw worked. You have no idea how emotional. The room snapped into silence. He reached into his coat and pulled out a thick envelope, cream-colored, sealed, edges worn like it had been handled repeatedly. He placed it on the table with a quiet thud that sounded louder than anything else that night. Aaron narrowed his eyes. What's that? Grandfather James looked at me first long enough to make my throat tighten, then back at them. That, he said, is the truth. Mom's smile faltered. Dad, what are you talking about? He pushed the envelope toward the sender. Before any paperwork updates, I think you two need to stop pretending you earn control over anything, Aaron scoffed. Come on, Grandpa, sit. Grandfather James snapped. Aaron dropped back into his chair. Grandfather James opened the envelope, pulling out papers, bank statements, savings records. Not detailed files, just enough proof. Enough to make the color drain from Mom's face the moment she recognized them. I spent the last year reviewing everything, he said. Every payment I made, every dollar intended to support my granddaughter. He looked directly at Mom. And everything you took. Mom's hand twitched. Dad, that's not don't. His voice hit like iron. You told me Elena never used the support I sent for her schooling. You told me she refused my help, that she didn't want my money. Aaron sat straighter, suddenly unsure. Grandfather James continued.